Peace and blessings, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath, happy Sabbath.
Happy Sabbath. Peace and blessings.
All right, first and foremost, all praises be unto the Most High, Almighty, Ahaya Yeshaya Christ, our Lord and our Savior, who the world calls Jesus Christ. This is the Essene Community Church of Christ. My name is Archbishop Shamar.
And I'm Bishop Micah Allah.
And we'll be bringing you today's Sabbath report / lesson, all right, which is the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son. We are at part 9, all right, yes, part 9. This might be turned into a whole book, all right, on just allowing people to understand the overall emphasis of the Bible, the story of the Bible. There's so much things going on. There's so much things added. But from we went to the beginning and we going to the end, we're seeing that the emphasis is on the image of God. That's where everything starts. That's the purpose of Christ coming. Christ being sent in the image of God. All right. Him being dealt with how he dealt with at crucifixion, had his crucifixion. All these things are letting us know that this story is all about the respect given onto the image of God. All right. Which starts off with Adam. Adam is made in that image with the body of man, given all the things to be in the likeness of that image. But then the Son of God is sent and he completes that image, connecting man and God as one in its full completeness. All right. Isaiah 53:1. And we're going to begin there.
This is the book of the prophet Isaiah chapter 53 verse 1. Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?
All right. So who has believed our report? All right. And to whom is the arm of the Most High revealed? We always go to this because even in Isaiah's time, he had to ask who's going to believe the report. All right. Because understanding how the Most High operates, he doesn't openly endorse an individual and show himself and say, this is my guy. All right. The Most High sends the word of the Lord, which is Christ, unto a chosen vessel. That vessel is sent out to the people to declare, thus saith the Most High. Christ reveals onto that vessel what the Father has revealed unto him. And the vessel is sent out to declare these things in the name of the Most High. All right. It was up to the people to come to understanding using their senses. Yes, those same senses that you're able to find those very things in this world that you love, those deals that you love. Yes, how much deals have you found? And like, yo, I searched, I scoured, and I found a better price somewhere else. All right, God wants us to use those investigative skills to come to understanding of his word and his righteousness and to Christ, our Lord and our Savior. All right. He wants us to use those same things we beat out bad prices with good prices. He wants us to beat out false doctrine with good doctrine. All right. To do comparisons. All right. To look into it more, to do intricate research. These are the things we were given our senses truly for. All right. And not the carnal things of the world. So there's no excuse because he knows how many things we sought, how many things we search for. All right. When we're fully, in that mode of search, when we're fully involved in that, we have all our might in that, we put all our mind in that, we see what we can do and what we can accomplish. So there's no excuse. All right. We are to come to understanding and truth and to go through and seek who has been shown the power of God, who's been shown the word of God. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go to the scriptures and ensure that they're interpreted, translated, and taught correctly. All right. So once again, we're at page 105 in the lesson. This is the consuming fire, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son. We are at part 9. We are at page 105, and we're going to begin again with the birth of Christ coming in. All right, so we're at Matthew 2:1.
This is the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 1. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? for we have seen a star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea. For thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared.
All right, so here we have Christ being born in Bethlehem in the days of Herod the king. All right, and this is Herod the Great. So we're going to start making emphasis of these points. All right, so this is Herod the Great. Going back to our lesson last week, the lesson last week. And prior, we seen how Herod was setting up himself to get the kingdom, all right, of Judea and become the king. All right, and he had to take out Hyrcanus, who was a rightful by blood. He had the right to the throne. He was high priest, but he was afraid that he would challenge him to the throne. Herod started to take out 45 right away, 45 governors, people who were ahead up there, took them out because he wanted to ensure that the Jews and those who are of the Hasmonean Empire, all right, wouldn't be able to go and enact their birthright, all right, by de jure. We went through de jure and de facto because Herod is running a de facto kingdom that is united with Rome, all right, which has made Jerusalem a Roman state, all right, and they're not their own kingdom, and they are taking word of advice, or not word of advice, they're taking all their commands from Rome. They have to be finalized by Rome right now, all right. So as Herod is wiping out this bloodline and those who would want to challenge him, he's seeing Christ being born. All right. And that's why we see this troubling him here. All right. Where the star is happening. All right. And all right. When Herod, the king, had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him, because these are the people that are in line with him. So what's going on right now is that Herod, all right, is dealing with the Sanhedrin. All right. He's dealing with the Hasmoneans. These people are in line with him. Those who are in line with him are in line with him because they're getting more valor. They're getting more power. All right. Being in line with the kingship that's put in place. All right. So Herod, after having cleared all this out, did all of these things, is now worried because now another rightful birthright individual, Christ, is being born, and he's coming into the world, and this is troubling him. So we're going to continue and see what's happening. So we're at Matthew 2:8.
It's the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 8. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also.
All right, so this is what we're seeing here. We're seeing this happen, and he's searching for the young child because this child is a rightful owner by de jure. All right, so he has right to the throne by de jure, and he knows that. So we're getting a little more understanding into why Herod is troubled and angry and why he's searching for this child. Now that we're coming from the book of Josephus, and we see more intricately the story of what's happening, how Herod got to the fame, what's happening with the Roman state and all of that. And now we're seeing him now worried about a child being born because he doesn't want the rightful ruler to challenge the throne. All right. And have a way to that. And we're understanding international law. Hyrcanus was in Persia. All right. And he was with the Parthians, and Herod was afraid that he was going to be able to speak up over there and speak about his birthright. All right. And he did. And they put him in a little power over there in a city. And he was making his way over there. He heard Herod is in place, over there, and him and Herod had a thing going on, so he thought he could go over there, not knowing Herod is going to set him up, and Herod set him up and slaughtered him. All right. So here, once again, he's searching for this young child, all right? And he's now doing the same thing that he was doing with Hyrcanus, with the, hey, Hyrcanus, yo, you're the father, you're the Holy One, you're the high priest, all of that. I'm dealing with you. And he turned his back on Hyrcanus. And now we're seeing him say that with Christ now too, where he's saying, yo, bring me the young child. I want to worship him too. This is the one. Going back to the story in Josephus, we know his true intents, all right? And when people read the story, you can kind of see it, but when you go into the Josephus and now come back, now it's more very clear to you what's going on, now that we know the historical things that has been happening, all right? But continue for us.
It's the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 9. When they had heard the king, they departed. And lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way.
All right. So they went. They found the child, all right, because the star was leading them to there, all right, and they seen the child, and they came into the house. They saw the child with his mother. They fell down. They worshiped Christ, all right, in a dream, all right. God warned them that they should not return to Herod, and they departed in another country, all right. So we see here that God already knowing, hey, Herod, he's trying to play this little game here. He did that with Hyrcanus, but God's intervening here and ensuring that's not going to happen in this case. All right. And the wise men have been now led into their own country going another way. All right. So they went around another way to avoid Herod. So we're going to go to Matthew 2 and 13.
It's the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 13. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son.
All right. So here we see here, all right, that an angel of the Lord is appearing to Joseph, and he's telling him to go into Egypt. All right. And this is the whole thing where Christ goes into Egypt for a long period of time. We're going to kind of see how long that period of time is. And there's more history that's happening in Judea, because the Bible kind of swings it right back to when Christ, he's died and Christ can come back now. All right. But during that time, there is some info in the Josephus on historical things that was happening while that's going on as well. So we're going to look at the timelines of that and all of that. All right. So Herod, all right, is seeking to kill the child again. He's seeking to kill the child that has the right to the throne. All right. The one that was prophesied about. All right. And Christ is in Egypt there until his death. And this is where he says out of Egypt, he's called his son. Some people go there to say, hey, Egypt is God's son too. And that's not the case. This is just a story going back connected to Christ, where Christ would be God calling him out of Egypt. All right, we're going to go to Matthew 2 and 16.
It's the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 16. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth, and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not.
All right. So Herod All right. This is Herod the Great. He saw that he was mocked of the wise men. All right. Because the wise men left and he went and started slewing all the children that's in Bethlehem and in all the coast thereof from 2 years old and under. So this is a lot of slaughter happening in these days. So this is going back to the image of God now. So he wants to kill the image of God. And now with killing this image of God, he's now killing even, and God lets us know, the children. All right. This is a holy, blessed image. This is the image of Christ. This is the image of God's child. All right. Which is why the children are holy, blessed. All right. Innocent. All right. He's now took this hate that he has for the image of God, or trying to get rid of it, because he knows that it's here to rule by right, by de jure right. And now he's taken innocent children's lives. All right. Violation against the image of God. All right. And we're going to see that as we go along in the story. All right. What God deals with that. All right. So we're going to continue. We're going to go to Matthew 2:19.
It's the book of St. Matthew, chapter 2, verse 19. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he had heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea, in the rumors of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that he might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene.
All right. So when Herod was dead, an angel comes again, appears unto Joseph in a dream. All right. Once again, a lot of these things has happened in night. The word of the Lord is sent onto individuals, as I said, usually in the night time. All right. These dreams are happening. All right. And he says, take the child and go back to the land of Israel. All right. So now it's time to go back to the land of Israel. Point of emphasis. Chapter 2 in Matthew is like a whole 30 something years. All right. That you have to understand. It's like a long period of time that they crammed into one time to tell you Christ was born. All right. And then he's gone into Egypt, and then Christ comes back. All right. So they tell you, all right, we start going through the scriptures. He does a couple things, and then he start going into, after Matthew 4, he starts going into the wilderness and all that, baptism, all of that. So he started in the kingdom and all of that. That's about 30 something years. All right. So it's a lot of time that passed by in Matthew from it said that Christ went to Egypt, and now he's now come back and he's going to the land now. That's a lot of time that's passed. That's time for him to go to next places, do certain things, travel. And that's a lot of time for things to happen in the kingdom of Israel while this is happening. So that's what we're going to kind of go into, what was happening in Israel during these times. All right. That led up to the death of Herod. All right. And we're going to go into that once again, that he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea. So we're going to get to how did this son get the kingship? Because now we're just seeing, there's another king, Archelaus' son. All right, we're going to see exactly what happened. Who is Archelaus? Who are the other sons of Herod? All right, that happened. How did Archelaus come into reign? And then, all right, the separation of, that Herod, not the same Herod that's dealing with Christ. And to let you know, there's many Herods in the New Testament. There's 5 King Herods. There's multiple King Herods. All right. There's 5 well-known King Herods. There's 2 that slaughtered out of their period. All right. And they all have Herod's name, but to define them, they have another name attached to them too. And they're usually called by that another name. All right. So what we read about in verse 22 there, that's Herod, Archelaus. All right. But you see, they just put Archelaus there because they're talking about Herod and they don't want to confuse you. All right. But his name is Herod as well. And we're going to get into that. So we're going to get into the 5 King Herods.
The 5 King Herods. There are 5 King Herods in the New Testament. Herod the Great. The first King Herod appears in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, when we are told, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and are come to worship him." This is Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 to 2, New American Standard Bible. Historical records identified the Herod in this passage as Herod the Great. He was the ruler of Judea at this time. He appears in the following verses in the New Testament: Matthew chapter 2, verse 1, chapter 3, verse 3, verse 7, 12, 13, 16, 19, 22, and Luke chapter 1, verse 5. The other Herods. Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch of Galilee, appears next in multiple places throughout the New Testament. Matthew chapter 14, verse 1 to 6, Matthew chapter 6, 14 to 29, Luke chapter 3, verse 1, verse 19 to 20, chapter 9, verse 7, 9, 13, 13 and 31, Acts 4 and 27, chapter 12, verse 1 to 21, and chapter 13, verse 1. Herod Philip, tetrarch of the region of Iturea and Trachonitis, appears only in Luke chapter 3, verse 1. Herod Agrippa the first appears in the book of Acts chapter 12, verse 1 to 24. And Herod Agrippa the second appears near the end of Acts. Acts chapter 25, verse 13 to 26, and I believe to 32. The Acts 25 account in the New American Standard Bible refers to Herod Agrippa II, using just the name Agrippa.
All right, so we're going to see that in the Bible, there's a bunch of different Herods. You have to kind of differentiate. So we dealt with Antipas, all right, Antipater, that was Antipater, who was his father. Now we're at Herod. Now Herod has many sons that are named Herods, all right, and you have to understand that the Herod that is now in the New Testament, a lot when Christ comes back and he's dealing with, that is Herod Antipas, all right? And we're going to get into what's going on with him. But he's a tetrarch of Galilee, and that's where Christ is. Christ went to Galilee, so that's why he would be dealing with this Herod now when he comes back, all right? But we're going to get into what happens with these sons and all of that, all right? But we're going to go once again into the birth date of Christ and the death of Herod to kind of get a timeline correction of when this stuff was happening, all right? And just for you to see just how long that was from Christ's birth to Herod's death and how much things had to still been going on in Judea until Christ comes back, all right?
Length and death of Herod the Great. Most historians today depend upon the work of Emil Schurer, who wrote in AD 1890 that Herod the Great died in 4 BC. He also provides a detailed, heavily footnoted 17 pages accounting for the timeline of Herod the Great's reign from 37 BC to 4 BC.
All right, so they say Herod reigned from 37 BC. So that's 37 BC to 4 BC. They say that's 33 years about. All right. Once again, this is the countdown to the Christian era, which is why you see we're going backwards in the countdown, all right, and not forward. We're going backwards, all right, because we're counting down to when that Christian era starts, all right, from the beginning of time to when that Christian era starts, all right. They know when the Christian era starts, so they know the beginning of time, how much years that is, so now they're just, from all those years on down, we'll count that from there and count backwards on down, all right, and it ends, when the Christian era comes to the Christian era, it should be 0. That's when the Christian era started. And then we have the new era, all right, which is the Christian era. And it starts from there. And that's how we get into our years now. All right. And that's how they separate the world today. All right. But continue for us.
However, Finnegan has provided a table similar to one developed by Schurer that shows Herod the Great died in 2 or 1 BC. Then later in his discussion, he demonstrates that Herod did not die in 4 BC, but in 1 BC. His detailed information is impressive. In the following quote, he demonstrates that Herod Philip died in the 22nd year of Tiberius, 35 to 36 AD. rather than the 20th year. This shifts the death of Herod the Great from 4 BC to 1 BC, and in turn shifts the birth of Christ to about 3 to 2 BC. The currently known text of Josephus's Antiquities, I believe chapter 18, paragraph 106, states that Herod Philip died in the 20th year of Tiberius, 33 to 34 AD, after ruling for 37 years. This points to Philip's ascension at the death of Herod in 4 BC. 4 BC plus 36 years, or 33 years AD, equals 37 years. Florian Ries reported that the Franciscan monk Malcolm Buhar claimed to have seen a 1517 Parisian copy of Josephus and an 1841 Venetian copy, in each of which the text read, "the 22nd year of Tiberius." The antiquity of this writing has not been abundantly confirmed. In 1995, David W. Bayer reported to the Society for Biblical Literature his personal examination in the British Museum for 46 editions of Josephus's Antiquities, published before 1700, among which 27 texts, all but 3 published before 1544, read 22nd year of Tiberius, while not one single edition published prior to 1544 read 20th year of Tiberius. Likewise, in the Library of Congress, 5 more editions read the 22nd year, while none prior to 1544 records the 20th year.
All right, so what we're seeing here is that they're going through records of Josephus. They have different copies of Josephus, all right? They have the Parisian copy, they have the Venetian copy, all right? And they have a couple different copies that are before 1544, and they're seeing that it stated that he died in the 22nd year of Tiberius, all right? And not the 20th year, which shifts the birthday and shifts dates a little bit. All right, and we're going to see a chart there that kind of makes it a little more clearer for us, but we're trying to get around when this stuff was happening. All right, but continue for us.
It was also found that the older versions of the text give variant lengths of reign for Philip of 32 to 36 years. But if we still allow a full 37-year reign, then the 22nd year of Tiberius, 35 to 36 AD, points to 1 BC. 1 BC plus 36 years equals 37 BC as the year of death of Herod. This is therefore the date which is accepted in the present book. Accordingly, if the birth of Jesus was 2 years or less before the death of Herod in 1 BC, the date of birth was in 3 or 2 BC, presumably precisely in the period 3 or 2 BC. So consistently attested by the most credible early church fathers.
All right, so here they show you when Herod the Great would have died, if you look at the bottom. All right, so once again, they're saying Herod reigned from about 37 BC to 1 BC. All right, and 1 BC would have been about when Christ, and it makes sense because we're starting it at the Christian era. The Christian era is going to start when Christ comes back around that time. All right, so we're getting closer to, he should be, he should be getting prepared to be, come back at these time when Herod the Great dies. All right, which was suggests that Christ was born about 3 to 2 BC. It gives it about, I guess that gives it about only about 2 years or so till he dies again. I guess it only gives some years for Christ to be in Egypt. Well, that's what we're seeing. He should have been like maybe 3 years old. 2 years. He's not that old. All right. So I was like, oh, it happened a lot of years. So that's my correction. It actually wasn't that much time of years. When he came back, Herod died pretty quickly.
The Most High moved him out.
Yes, the Most High. And we're going to see what happened with him. All right. So once again, we have the dates there where you can kind of see. All right, when Herod the Great would have died, they have Christ at the bottom there. You would see 1 BC, AD 1. That's when they're saying he would have been born about, all right? And then his son Herod the Philip reign. He reigns about 37 years to AD 33. All right, and it takes a while for him to reign and stuff. So we're gonna go through Herod the Great's sons that bear the same name. So Herod had a daughter of Simon the high priest. All right, going back to the Hasmonean kingdom, which is connected to the Maccabean kingdom. All right, in Judea, and Herod marries this high priest daughter. All right, and has children with her. All right, her name is Herodias. All right, so her name is Miriam Herodias. Herodias. She has two sons, all right? Alexander and Aristobulus. So these names again come because Aristobulus is the name of one of the forefathers going back to the Hasmonean Maccabean Empire, all right? And him and his, brother were beefing over the whole empire that enabled Pompey to come and get the kingdom, all right? So they keep naming these children after this, and then we see Herod now, and he's naming all his children Herod. So this is why there's a lot of confusion here, all right? So we have these two sons. These two sons have the bloodline of Judah in them through the high priest's daughter's side, all right? So you're going to see that there's going to be a conflict with Herod thinking that these two sons of his are going to try to take his throne. As once again, Herod has been paranoid of children that hold the de jure birthright to come and take the throne from him. He has two of his own. His other children don't have any Hebrew blood in them. These two children have high priest blood in them. All right, so let's keep that into emphasis on what Herod's going to do to these two children. All right, then we have Archelaus. All right, then we have Antipas. Then we have Philip. All right, and these are the five major ones that we're going to read about. All right, and those ones come from some Samaritans. So Archelaus and Antipas come from a Samaritan. All right, so that is not the bloodline. They don't have de jure right to the throne. They cannot bother him. All right, the same he has another one by Cleopatra. That's not the Cleopatra in Egypt. That's an unrelated Cleopatra. All right, so going back once again, I have a next chart there of Herod and the children and how it went. All right, and who came out of them. All right. And now we're going to go to the history of the family of Herod the Great.
Who was Herod? Wait, there were how many Herods? Herod's dysfunctional family. As we'll soon see, Herod wasn't the most stable character in Israel. He was married 10 times. Of those 10 wives, historians know the names of 8. Doris, Miriam the first, Miriam the second, Malthus, Cleopatra, no relation to the Egyptian ruler, Ellipse, Pallas, and Phaedra. Herod's family loses their ever-loving minds. As you've probably started to piece together, Herod the Great lacked some interpersonal skills. As a matter of fact, as his rule went on, he kept leveling up and crazy. Herod's court was full of drama and infighting, and this definitely didn't help.
All right, so you're going to see, and we're going to go into the stories in Josephus, that Herod gets crazier and crazier. This is why he's killing all the children. Whatever child, like if this thing starts to possess him about wanting to have the kingdom, he's doing whatever to take it, and it's also turning him crazy. He's being paranoid. Every second he's thinking someone's coming to take his throne. Even his own children, you're going to see he's paranoid of. All right, but continue.
Miriam the first sons, Aristobulus and Alexander, were educated in Rome, often living with Augustus. When Antipater, Herod's first son, was brought back into the kingdom, the wheels started to come off. Antipater was jealous of Herod's favorite sons, and somehow talked Herod's brother and sister into convincing the king that they were plotting to kill him. Herod made Antipater his heir, but that wasn't good enough. As long as they still lived, Herod's firstborn saw them as a threat. So he continued to spread rumors about them. It got so bad that Herod took the issue to Augustus, charging Alexander and Aristobulus with treason. Augustus talked him out of putting his sons on trial and helped draft a plan for reconciliation. Needless to say, that wasn't going to work for Antipater, so the gossiping continued. Herod finally got Augustus's permission to try his sons, and they were put to death. Now Antipater's succession was set. Did that make him happy?
All right. So we're seeing here that who's going to develop this trait of Herod the Great? Which one of his sons going to have it the most? You're going to find out that it's Antipater. All right. Herod the Antipater. He wants the throne. He's worried about the sons as well because he wants to get it after the dad is gone. He's on it after the dad is gone. And he's like, these two have the birthright. So therefore, you're going to see that this son, Antipater, has been spreading rumors about the two sons to get his dad paranoid that these two sons are going to try to take him over. And therefore, he's charging them with treason because he's like, these guys are trying to take over the kingdom from me. Charge them with treason, get them killed. So we're going to see that this is what the story is going through. Herod is trying to keep the Jewish state going, all right, and not trying to allow it to go to the rightful de jure rulers. This has gotten to him in a mad frenzy. This spreads to his son Antipater. His son Antipater has a thing against these two children that are born out of the high priests of the Hasmonean / Maccabean Empire, all right? Because they know that this child has blood in it that even though it's not from the father's side, so we're far away from, is it Judah? Is it out of David's line? We're out of that. It's just, is it an Israelite? Is it a half Israelite? Is it from the mother's side? Right? This is what we're at now. When it used to be, it could come from one line of family. All right?
It's just anything Israel.
Anything Israel now. All right? We're at anything Israel versus a heathen outside of Israel. All right? So they rather put Israel in than one of them or someone close that was a part of the priesthood. But once again, it's not going back into the king of Judah. All right? That's who it's supposed to be. Right, it's turned into who's the king of Judea and all of this different stuff and not how the Most High put it down. All right, but once again, Antipater has the sons put to death. He does all of these things. Is he happy? It's going to answer that for you.
Did that make him happy? No. The idiot was impatient and made plans to poison his father. Herod found out, and Antipater was executed just days before Herod died. Herod's growing insanity throughout his life. Herod showed flashes of insanity. After having Miriam killed, he would sometimes send servants to fetch her. As he got older and he grew more paranoid, things got worse. And a lot of this came from the stress of trying to appease Rome and Israel and never truly succeeding at either. When he tried to appease Rome by hanging a golden eagle, the symbol of Rome, at the temple entrance, he set off a firestorm.
All right, so we're going to see, and we're going to go into this more in more detail, that while Christ is gone, all this is happening. They bring the symbol of Rome, the eagle, and they bring that to the temple, going back to the image of God violations. So there's more of what's happening. We're seeing that Israel is not the one that wants to bring images into the temple and do all of that. It's the Gentiles that's ruling, that's constantly trying to do that. And Israel, in this time and age, every time we see Israel, they're willing to die than to have that happen. So these aren't the reasons why we're out of the kingdom. It's not idol worship. It's not listening to these things. It's one thing and one thing only. All right. Not dealing with the true image of God that came to us. All right. But it's not for these things. Because anytime we check Israel out, you're going to see that they'll put their life on the line. They rather all be dead right now than to violate one of these temple rules that they have. All right. But continue for us.
Young priests and devout Jews were incensed at the sacrilege. When rumors started circulating that Herod was melancholy and dying, a bunch of Jewish students saw this as a perfect opportunity to destroy the emblem. These rabbinical students chopped it down and destroyed it with axes. But soldiers caught about 40 of the rebels. Herod had them burned alive, along with their 2 rabbis. Understanding his lack of popularity and worried that he wouldn't be mourned in his death, Herod made plans for a mass assassination. He summoned notable individuals from all over Judea and had them imprisoned at the Hippodrome Theater in Jericho. When important figures from all over Israel died alongside Herod, he would assure mass mourning. The order was given, but it never carried out. It said that Herod's sister Salome the first released the prisoners and shared the details of the plot.
All right, so you're gonna see that Herod's first son, Antipater, he's possessed about the two sons. All right, that's from the other, the high priest son. He wants to have them killed. He ends up dying himself. So Antipater and Antipas are two different Herods. All right, so there's Antipater and there's Antipas. Antipas, once again, is the one you're gonna see that's dealing with Christ a lot at these times in Galilee. Antipater died previously before that because of all the stuff that's happened. I have a map there. You can see that when Herod dies, he splits up his kingdom to his sons, and that's how the reign goes. All right, so they all get a little piece of place to rule over. All right, as tetrarchs, but there's going to be one son that's above all of that stuff. All right, and you're going to kind of see that as we go into the story. So we're going to go into the works of Flavius Josephus, and we're going to actually go to that part now to hear about, all right, the temple of God and the golden eagle and what's happening during these times.
The works of Flavius Josephus, Book 1, containing the interval of 167 years from the taking of Jerusalem by Antiochus Epiphanes to the death of Herod the Great, chapter 33. The golden eagle is cut to pieces. Herod's barbarity when he was ready to die. He attempts to kill himself. He commands Antipater to be slain. He survives him 5 days and then dies. Paragraph 1. Now Herod's distemper became more and more severe to him, and this because these his disorders fell upon him in his old age, and when he was in a melancholy condition, for he was already 70 years of age, he had been brought by the calamities that had happened to him about his children, whereby he had no pleasure in life. Even when he was in health, the grief also that Antipater was still alive aggravated his disease, whom he resolved to put to death, now not at random, but as soon as he should be well again, and resolved to have him slain in a public manner.
All right, so Herod's distemper became more and more severe to him. So Josephus is once again detailing that Herod has a temper problem. He's getting more and more enraged, all right, and it's getting more and more severe, all right, and this has become disorders are falling upon him in his old age, and he's in a melancholy condition. We're going to get that etymology real quick.
It's the etymology of melancholy. Melancholy, noun, from the 1300. Melancholy, mental disorder characterized by sullenness, gloom, irritability, and propensity to causeless and violent anger. From Old French, melancholy, black bile, ill, disposition, anger, annoyance. From the 13th century. From late Latin, melancholia. From Greek, melancholia, sadness, literally excess of black bile. From melis, genitive melanos, black. See melano, chloe, bile. See cholera.
All right, so melancholy, all right. Melancholy, all right, and means black bile, basically. Everybody knows melanin being black, and then, all right, the bile is the chloe part, all right. Melancholy, all right, is a mental disorder characterized by sullenness, gloom, irritability, violent anger, all right. So this is a mental disorder that causes violent anger, irritability, gloominess. So some people are just angry for, they just get angry, and that's how some people are, especially when they get older. All right, and sometimes these are conditions, and they say, or I guess the condition is named after black bile, which they say is a black bile. He has too much black, or there's a black bile is unbalanced. All right, which is they say is related to that disease. All right, but we see Herod here is suffering, and he's going to be suffering many more calamities. But why is he suffering? That's what you have to get into. Herod is suffering because, first of all, he was sinning. All right, he had a lot of years where he was fine. All right, because we've seen that even though he was doing what he was doing to Israel, he had a respect to the temple. He wasn't touching it. He was trying to keep it away. He wanted to build things for the Most High. He wasn't doing nothing great. He was doing to the people, but he gave the respect unto God. All right. Soon as Christ is born, he starts losing his cool and his temper. He's doing things out of the ordinary. He's killing children. He's getting berserk. All right. And this is happening because he wants to keep the throne, and the Most High is allowing this to grow and grow. So we're going to continue to paragraph 2.
All right. This is paragraph 2. There also now happened to him, among his other calamities, a certain popular sedition. There were 2 men of learning in the city, Jerusalem, who were thought the most skillful in the laws of their country, and were on that account had in very great esteem all over the nation. They were the one Judas, the son of Sepphoris, and the other Matthias, the son of Margilus. There was a great concourse of the young men to these men when they expounded the laws, and there got together every day a kind of an army of such as were growing up to be men. Now when these men were informed that the king was wearing away with melancholy and with a distemper, they dropped words to their acquaintance, how it was now a very proper time to defend the cause of God, and to pull down what had been erected contrary to the laws of their country. For it was unlawful there should be any such thing in the temple as images, or faces, or the like representation of any animal whatsoever. Now the king had put up a golden eagle over the great gate of the temple, which was learned men exhorted them to cut down.
All right. So this is what's happening. So there's 2 men of great learning in the city. All right. Their names Judas and Matthias. All right. And we're going to see that these are Galileans. Galileans had a lot of seditions that was going on. You're going to see that Herod was Antipas. Herod Antipas was over the Galileans. All right. Because he was kind of using them to back himself up with the other ones who was being backed by the Pharisees and Sadducees. All right, so we're going to get into this storyline here to see that there's going to be a little interconnected mix of Essene Galilean community that's going on. All right, and they have even more repulse for the law. All right, they have this thing for the law that's going to make them even go further. Right. And we see here that they're breaking down the scriptures, they're expounding the laws, they're gathering up some people, and they're going to go against the king now that they've been informed that he's being taken away. He's wearing away with melancholy, all right, and the distemper, all right. And so they want to go and take down the image that he put up over the gate of the temple, which is the eagle. So what this is letting me also know that once again, and we're going to get into these lessons, we're going to have the who is Idumea, Edom, all right, coming up. And this is letting us know all these things that's happening. This is the signs of God. He's letting us know a lot of signs that this kingdom is what's happening here. And starting with this kingdom, that they're trying to turn themselves into what God has established. All right. And this is why they say that the mystery of iniquity already does work. It's already been happening. From Rome came there with the empire and everything. We're seeing the story build up. Rome is still here. You get what I'm saying? So the story is a long story that has to involve Rome and what they're doing. And we're seeing here the eagle come up. All right. And we know what that eagle represents. All right. And that eagle is passed on to all its kingdoms, all the people that come from him. They all deal with the eagle because the eagle is the sign of Rome. All right, but continue for us.
All right. Now the king had put up a golden eagle over the great gate of the temple, which these learned men exhorted them to cut down, and told them that if there should any danger arise, it was a glorious thing to die for the laws of their country, because that the soul was immortal, and that an eternal enjoyment of happiness did await such as died on that account, while the mean-spirited and those that are not wise enough to show a right of love of their souls preferred a death by a disease. before that which is the result of a virtuous behavior.
All right, so this is why it seems like, hey, they have Essene doctrine, because the Essenes, you're going to see, Josephus says that they teach that the soul is immortal. They teach the resurrection to come. This is what this guy is telling them, that, hey, put your life on the line. Don't worry. You're going to be able to come back. It's glorious to die to be a martyr. It's glorious to die for that. Essenes had that standpoint about them, laughing in the face of these things when it was happening, ready to become martyrs. All right, but continue for us.
Paragraph 3. At the same time that these men made this speech to their disciples, a rumor was spread abroad that the king was dying, which made the young men set about the work with greater boldness. They therefore let themselves down the top of the temple with thick cords, and this at midday. And while a great number of people were in the temple, and cut down that golden eagle with axes. This was presently told to the king's captain of the temple, who came running with a great body of soldiers, and caught about 40 of the young men, and brought them to the king.
All right, so here we see, once again, the rumor spread abroad. The king's dying. The young men set to go even more bolder with what they're doing. All right, and they went into the temple. They chopped down the eagle, took it down with the axe. All right, the captain is hearing. He's coming with soldiers. He's catching 40 of them. He's imprisoning them. Continue for us.
And when he asked them, first of all, whether they had been so hardy as to cut down the golden eagle, they confessed they had done so. And when he asked them by whose command they had done it, they replied, at the command of the law of their country. And when he further asked them how they could be so joyful when they were to be put to death, they replied, because they should enjoy greater happiness after they were dead.
All right, so he sees all of this, all right? I'm going to put the rest in there, but he sees all this and he lets them go. He's like, wow, these people are ready to die for their faith, for everything. They're ready to put it all on the line, all right? And as I've been showing that Israel, in these times, it's not them dealing with the pagan worship and all of that. They brought in people, all right? They converted Idumeans through Hyrcanus, all right, the original father, all right, who spread the kingdom, the Maccabean kingdom, into an actual kingdom, and then allowed our ruler to rule on there for the first time. I think it said 400 and something years. All right. So all that happening now, these people have been trying to keep the laws. It's the people that they've converted that's trying to do different things inside of there. All right. They're trying to keep the law. They're ready to put their life on the law. They're following the law of their country. All right. So we're going to continue now and see that Herod actually overcomes his sickness, how he overcomes that real quick. All right, we're going to go back to the works of Flavius Josephus.
It's the works of Flavius Josephus, book 1, chapter 33. The golden eagle is cut to pieces, Herod's barbarity when he was ready to die. He attempts to kill himself. He commands Antipater to be slain. He survives him 5 days and then dies. Paragraph 4. At this the king was in such an extravagant passion that he overcame his disease for the time, and went out and spake to the people, wherein he made a terrible accusation against those men, as being guilty of sacrilege, and as making greater attempts under pretense of their law. And he thought they deserved to be punished as impious persons.
All right, so he overcame his disease. He heard what happened and he was so angry that he had extravagant passion that he was healed for a second. He overcame his disease for that moment. All right. That's how passionate he was about this. All right. And he was trying to charge those men with sacrilege. All right. That they're killing something holy, which is the idol that they say has to be taken down by their holy laws. All right. But continue for us.
Whereupon the people were afraid lest a great number should be found guilty, and desired that when he had first punished those that put them upon this work, and then those that were caught in it, he would leave off his anger as to the rest. With this the king complied, though not with difficulty, and ordered those that had let themselves down, together with their rabbis, to be burnt alive, but delivered the rest that were caught to the proper officers to be put to death by them.
The people were afraid unless a number of them be found guilty. All right. All right. And we see that he burnt them alive. All right, and delivered the rest that were caught to the proper officers to be put to death. So he's not playing with none of them. All right, that's what you want to do. He's going to put them to death. We're seeing Herod is constantly putting innocent people to death. He's not trying to follow the laws no more. He's not trying to respect what's going on. He's actually giving respect and honor unto Rome now, because that's what he's doing when he puts the eagle in the front of the gate of the temple, right above it. He's giving honor unto Rome, all right, because that's Rome's symbol, all right. So we're going to continue here. All right, and we're going to get the sickness actually returns to Herod. We're going to continue to paragraph 5.
This is Flavius Josephus, Book 1, Chapter 33, Paragraph 5. After this, the distemper seized upon his whole body, and greatly disordered all its parts with various symptoms. For there was a gentle fever upon him, and an intolerable itching all over the surfaces of his body, and continual pains in his colon, and dropsical turnouts about his feet, and an inflammation of the abdomen, and a putrefaction of his privy member that produced worms, besides which he had difficulty of breathing upon him, and could not breathe but when he sat upright, and had convulsions of all his members, insomuch that the diviners said those diseases were a punishment upon him for what he had done to the rabbis. Yet did he struggle with his numerous disorders, and still had a desire to live and hope for recovery, and considered of several methods of cure. Accordingly, he went over Jordan and made use of those hot baths at Calahor, which ran into the lake Asphaltitis, but are themselves sweet enough to be drunk.
All right, so we can stop there right quick. Yeah, that word is kind of right, but I did look it up. Rabbins is a word for rabbi.
Okay.
Yeah, so rabbin, rabbi, they're the same thing. All right, so it's not a typo per se. So I didn't know that, but so rabbin and rabbis, they're the same. So here we see that what's happening to him, this temper is seizing upon his whole body. All right. He's been greatly disordered in all the parts with various symptoms. All right. He has a gentle fever upon him, intolerable itching all over his body. He has pains in his colon. All right. He has dropsical turnouts about his feet, because it says water. So it's water blisters. You know, when you have the little water bumps and it turns to a blister too, when you pop it.
Build up a fluid in the tissue.
Yeah. All right. So he has that on his feet. So his feet are swelling up. There are water bumps all up on that. All right. And this goes back to that. What is he thinking? And this is what we have also, there's a lot of lessons coming. We have a lesson, all right, the root of sickness. All right. What is he thinking? He's thinking, yo, let me go to the purest waters. Let me go here. These things, when God is smiting you for what you're doing, it has nothing to do what you're eating, what you're doing, what happened to you outside, what you touched, all of this stuff. All right. And that's what people have to understand. The world has you thinking like that. And when you think like that, then they can give you other suggestions for your healing. All right. Other medicinal things. You're going to see that in this lesson that we're going to get into, the root of sickness, that there's one thing that God is bringing us to, all right, that you're going to have to know to, that you did some violation, as we're seeing, against the image of God. That's what you did. You did some violation against the image of God. Therefore, sickness is coming upon you, all right?
Also be attributed to his old age.
No, because he was fine. You have people that's old and they're fine when they're old. You get what I'm saying? We have prophets that, they're giving up their spirit at the last second when they're old. You get what I'm saying? They can die when they're old, but they're not dying of grave sicknesses and stuff. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
So when that is happening, that is God sending a message. Go to Sirach 38 and 9. All right, so once again, going to this book, Sirach, the Apocrypha. This is a lot of the 400 years that was missing that we went into, the Maccabees, all of that could be found in here. That's supposed to be in the middle between the New Testament and the Old Testament. We're going to go to Sirach / Ecclesiasticus 38 and 9.
This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 38, verse 9. My son, in thy sickness be not negligent, but pray unto the Lord, and he will make thee whole. Leave off from sin, and order thine hands aright, and cleanse thine heart from all wickedness.
All right. And then it goes into, then he'll bring you into a doctor and then you'll be healed and all of that. But first things first, in thy sickness, be not negligent. All right. Negligent of what? All right. Of your sin. All right. But pray unto the Lord and he'll make thee whole. Leave off from the sin that's happening. Order thy hands aright. This is what Herod here is not thinking of. All right. So when this stuff is happening to him, all right, and he's having putrefacients of his privy parts. So imagine his privy parts is leaking stuff too as well. All right. He's producing worms out of there. All right. He's having difficulty breathing. All right. He can't breathe correctly when he's sitting upright. All right. He's having convulsions in all of his members. And there's the diviners are saying this is what he's done for the rabbis. I'm saying that this is what he's done for what he's been doing to the children, to all of this stuff from prior. All right. And when this stuff is happening, he's thinking to go to the waters of Jordan, to go to the hot baths. All right. So now he's going to take the hot baths, the thermal showers. He's going to thermal. I need the best of the best thermal showers. All right. To cure this. All right.
And here the physicians thought proper to bathe his whole body in warm oil by letting it down into a large vessel full of oil, whereupon his eyes failed him, and he came and went as if he was dying. And as a tumult was then made by his servants, at their voice he revived again. Yet did he after this despair of recovery, and gave orders that each soldier should have 50 drachmae apiece, and that his commanders and friends should have great sums of money given them.
All right. So this stuff is happening. They're trying to bathe his body in oils. All right. Warm oils and, doing different stuff. His eyes are still failing him. All right. They start making atonement for him. All right. He's revived. All right. By his servants at their voice. All right. This happens to him and he recovers. He's like, yo, these people, made me alive again. Give them money. He's like, yo, give them money. So he started handing out money to his peoples now because he's like, yo, by their voice, he got revived again. Continue for us.
All right. Paragraph 6. He then returned back and came to Jericho in such melancholy state of body as almost threatened him with present death. When he proceeded to attempt a horrid wickedness, for he got together the most illustrious men of the whole Jewish nation, out of every village, into a place called the Hippodrome, and there shut them in, and then called for his sister Salome and her husband Alexas, and made this speech to them. I know well enough that the Jews will keep a festival upon my death. However, it is in my power to be mourned for on other accounts, and to have a splendid funeral, if you will but be subservient to my commands. Do you take care to send soldiers to encompass these men that are now in custody and slay them immediately upon my death. And then all Judea, and every family of them, will weep at it, whether they will or no.
All right. So he's, once again, afraid of these people that's been trying to take the stuff back. All right. He wants them to keep a feast for his death. All right. But he believes that feast is going to be like a celebration of his death. All right. But he wants them to mourn and things. All right. On these times. So he's saying to kill these people at these times so that they could mourn for his death. Because it's supposed to be a mourning going on for him. And he wants them to mourn. But he's like, when he dies, he knows they're going to keep a feast. All right. Yeah, they're going to keep night. They're going to be, I mean. But he wants it to be a mourning. And to be mourning, he wants them to kill these people immediately upon his death so that they are going to mourn, all right, when this happens. So he's forcing the mourning. So we're seeing right now that Herod the Great is he's has enraged with evil thoughts and killing, all right, and anybody who's trying to step on his reign and him being honored in Judea, all right. But continue again for us.
Paragraph 7. These were the commands he gave them when there came letters from his ambassadors at Rome, whereby information was given that Acme was put to death at Caesar's command, and that Antipater was condemned to die. However, they wrote withal that if Herod had a mind rather to banish him, Caesar permitted him so to do.
All right, so they wanted to banish Antipater, if Herod wanted him to do that instead of killing him. All right, but we all know that Herod wants to kill this son. But continue for us.
So he for a while revived and had a desire to live. But presently after he was overborne by his pains, he was disordered by want of food and by convulsive cough, and endeavored to prevent a natural death. So he took an apple and asked for a knife, for he used to pare apples and eat them. He then looked around about to see that there was nobody to hinder him, and lift up his right hand as if he would stab himself. But Archibus, his first cousin, came running to him, and held his hand, and hindered him from doing so. On which occasion a very great lamentation was made in the palace, and as if the king were expiring. As soon as ever Antipater heard that, he took courage, and with joy in his looks besought his keepers for a sum of money to loose him and let him go. But the principal keeper of the prison did not only obstruct him in that his intention, but ran and told the king what his design was. Hereupon the king cried out louder than his distemper would well bear, and immediately sent some of his guards and slew Antipater. He also gave order to have him buried at Hyrcanium, and altered his testament again, and therein made Archelaus, his eldest son, the brother of Antipas, his successor, and made Antipas tetrarch.
All right, so here we're seeing that his son Antipater, all right, he was trying to, he was getting sick, he was doing all that. He was hearing his father was dying. He was like, he start reviving himself. All right, he's just like his father. They revive at the word of,
Calamity in somebody else.
yeah, somebody else, and getting word that, possibly their plan could still go as planned. All right, the idea could still go as planned. So he revives back. He takes courage. All right, he wants some of the sums of money. All right, but the prison keeper is hearing this. He goes back to the father, tells him the father is not angry, like, this guy is trying to do this thing again and take over. All right, so he has him slewed. He goes and he's altering his testament. All right, so he's once again he must have a trust. He must have something. He's altering his testament, a written will. All right, he's altering it, and he's now made Archelaus, the eldest son, the brother of Antipas, his successor. So this is how you see Archelaus that we went back to, where he was ruling now. All right, Archelaus, the son of Herod the Great. So this is how he gets the rulership from Herod. Herod has a problem with the other sons. This is the son he has more favor with. So he now allows this son to be his successor. Herod Antipas, he's like, no, you're not going to be the king, but you're going to be a tetrarch. All right, and we're going to get into what that is as we continue.
So,
right.
yeah. So he for a little while revived and had a desire to live, but presently after he was overborne by his pains, and was disordered by want of food, and by convulsive cough, and endeavored to prevent natural death. All right, this is the works of Flavius Josephus, book 1, chapter 33, paragraph 8. So Herod, having survived the slaughter of his son 5 days, died, having reigned 34 years since he had caused Antigonus to be slain, and obtained his kingdom, but 37 years since he had been made king by the Romans.
All right, so he said he ruled 37 years since he was made king by the Romans. So he had a lot of time to rule before Christ was born. All right, and then he had a short time after Christ was born. All right, but continue for us.
Now, as for his fortune, it was prosperous in all other respects, if ever any other man could be so, since from a private man he obtained the kingdom and kept it so long, and left it to his own sons. But still in his domestic affairs he was most unfortunate man. He was a most unfortunate man. Now, before the soldiers knew his death, Salome and her husband came out and dismissed those that were in bonds, whom the king had commanded to be slain, and told them that he had altered his mind, and would have every one of them sent to their own homes. When these men were gone, Salome told the soldiers the king was dead, and got them and the rest of the multitude together to an assembly in the amphitheater at Jericho, where Ptolemy, who was entrusted by the king with his signet ring, came before them, and spake of the happiness the king had attained, and comforted the multitude, and read the epistle which had been left for the soldiers, wherein he earnestly exhorted them to bear goodwill to his successor. And after he had read the epistle, he opened and read his testament, wherein Philip was to inherit Trachonitis, and the neighboring countries, and Antipas was to be tetrarch, as we said before, and Archelaus was made king. He had also been commanded to carry Herod's ring to Caesar, and the settlements he had made sealed up, because Caesar was to be lord of all the settlements he had made, and was to confirm his testament. And he ordered that the dispositions he made were to be kept as they were in his former testament.
All right, so here we're seeing now, all right, that the king has relations with the Caesar, all right. The Caesar is supposed to be over all of his estate. He gave Philip, all right, Trachonitis, what did you tell me? Trachonitis, all right. He gave Philip Trachonitis, all right, and the neighboring countries, all right, but he wasn't Tetrarch, all right. Tetrarch, he made Antipas, all right, Herod Antipas, all right, and the king, he made Archelaus, all right. So Archelaus is replacing him as king, and he has the Antipas, Herod Antipas, as Tetrarch, and we're going to see what that is, which is basically he's just ruling different kingdoms, but he's not a king. He's lower than the king, all right? But he's just ruling these certain areas as governor. All right, but we're going to continue.
All right, paragraph 9. So there was an acclamation made to Archelaus to congratulate him upon his advancement, and the soldiers with the multitude went round about in troops, and promised him their goodwill, and besides prayed God to bless his government. After this, they betook themselves to prepare the king's funeral. And Archelaus omitted nothing of magnificence therein, but brought out all the royal ornaments to augment the pomp of the deceased. There was a bier all of gold embroidered with precious stones, and a purple bed of various contexture, with the dead body upon it, covered with purple, and a diadem was put upon his head, and a crown of gold above it, and a scepter in his right hand. And near to the bier were Herod's sons, and a multitude of his kindred, next to which came his guards, and the regiment of Thracians, the Germans, and also the Gauls, all accounted as if they were going to war. But the rest of the army went foremost, armed and following their captains and officers in a regular manner, after whom 500 of his domestic servants and freed men followed, with sweet spices in their hand. And the body was carried 200 furlongs to Herodium, where he had given order to be buried. And this shall suffice for the conclusion of the life of Herod.
All right, so here we're seeing here that his son brought it all out for him. He's like, I'm going to honor him. He brought out all the royal everything, the gold, the diadem, the clothing, every single thing, all right, to give him his royal burial, all right. They're joined by, other nations there. They're joined by the army, captains, officers, freedmen, domestic servants. Everybody is honoring the king. All right. And this is how Herod the Great's life comes to an end. All right. From his sickness, from all of this, him passing on the kingdom to his sons, dividing it up. All right. And we're still in the time of Christ. All right. We are still in the time of Christ. Christ is still here, and the sons are going to be dealing with Christ. All right. Herod the Great doesn't really get to deal or even meet Christ. He doesn't even get to meet Christ. All right. He never even get to see the boy. All right.
So how great was he?
Yeah. How great was he? All right. So we're going to go now to, all right, the works of Flavius Josephus, And we're now going to see how the Roman Caesar has final say over Herod's estate. So we're just seeing the condition of Israel at this time, that even though he's king, he's saying all of this was going to happen in Israel, it still has to go up to Rome, the high authorities of Rome. Rome is ruling right now. Rome is ruling Israel. Israel must answer to Rome. All right. Rome already has one of their compadres, Herod, placed in there, who's half and half. All right. And now he's giving his loyalty onto Rome. Rome has Judah under subjection. It's not a kingdom. It's a Roman state that they have up like, it's basically like, I guess, kind of say it's like, what do you call, you can't even really say it's like what we have now, a constitutional monarchy, because Rome is over the king, all right? Over in the constitutional monarchy, the king is still king and it has the last say. Rome is over this whole thing. So this is a whole Roman kingdom state, all right, where Rome is still the ruler. They still allowed to have a king, but all of them is being answers to Rome, all right?
So it's like the head corporation, pretty much.
Yeah. Rome is the head one, and they're all under them.
Rome is like the empire.
Yeah. And they are paying to them too. So all they care about, you're paying to us, you're giving us stuff, you're giving us, paying your worship onto us. And this is how you have to understand with Rome. Rome would allow the kingdoms to operate as long as they're paying honor to him, tribute to him. That means that you're in line with us, all right?
And paying your taxes.
And you're paying your taxes. That's your tribute.
That's why all the kings of the earth are going to Rome kissing the Pope's ring.
Yeah. They're paying their tax. Everything is going back to them, all right? So they're like, you guys do what you want. Just pay us your money, and everything is fine. So, so we're going to go once again to see how the Roman Caesar had final say over Herod's state and how it gets divided to his sons.
The works of Flavius Josephus, Book 2, Chapter 6. The Jews greatly complain of Archelaus and desire that they may be made subject to Roman governors. But when Caesar had heard what they had to say, he distributed Herod's dominions among his sons, according to his own pleasure. Paragraph 3. So Caesar, after he had heard both sides, dissolved the assembly for that time. But a few days afterward, he gave the one half of Herod's kingdom to Archelaus by the name of Ethnarch, and promised to make him king also afterward, if he rendered himself worthy of that dignity.
All right. So the Jews are complaining about Archelaus, all right, and what he's doing. They're complaining about the idol worship that was attempted there. They're making great moans to try to, let's try to, it just changed, the reign just changed. Let's see if we could get something through to the Caesar who's ruling over this area. So they could go to someone higher than the king in that area. They're trying to go to the Caesar, all right? Caesar's hearing about the problems about the kingdom, Herod giving it to his sons, and he's hearing both sides, the Jews, and he's hearing of the sons. All right. Afterwards, they're going to give the kingdom to his sons. All right. So they do go with that. They give it to Archelaus, who gets one half of the kingdom. All right. And he's promised to make him king afterward if he renders himself worthy of dignity. So even though it's in law, even though he has the right, once again, the Roman has the final say so. And they're like, okay, everything can go right, but you have to show your allegiance to Rome. And if you're shown to have that dignity, then we'll confer that right of king to you. All right. So once again, Rome is controlling a lot of what's happening. So they're like, all right, you do have a right to be king. That is your right that your father passed on to you, all of that. But we're the ones that saying whatever's going down. You show us dignity, then we'll honor what you have. All right. But continue for us.
But as to the other half, he divided it into two tetrarchies and gave them to two other sons of Herod, the one of them to Philip, and the other to Antipas, who contested the kingdom with Archelaus.
All right, so you're going to see that Antipas and Archelaus was contesting the kingdom against each other. So there is a whole fight between these brothers going back. So Antipater, he wanted the kingdom. All right, he got taken out. He took out the two children. That was from the Hasmonean line to the mother. All right. He took them out. He wanted the kingdom. He got taken out. We see Archelaus and we see Antipas here. Antipas wants to take Archelaus out because he wants the kingdom for himself. So this thing that the Father had is passing on to all of them. All right. And Archelaus and Antipas, they have this little thing here where Antipas wants to rule, but he's only made tetrarch. And he doesn't want that. He wants to be actual ruler. All right. But continue for us.
Under this last was Perea in Galilee, with the revenue of 200 talents. But Bithynia and Trachonitis and Auranitis and certain parts of Zeno's house about Jamnia, with the revenue of 100 talents, were made subject to Philip, while Idumea and all Judea and Samaria were parts of the ethnarchy of Archelaus. Although Samaria was eased of 1/4 of its taxes, out of regard to their not having revolted with the rest of the nation.
So you see here, they have to pay taxes to Rome. So Israel's paying taxes. Samaria, they never revolted. They got tax reduced. They're like, you know what? Y'all are good. Y'all showing dignity to Rome. We reduce your tax. All right. But continue for us.
He also made subject to him the following cities, viz., Stratos Tower, and Sebast, and Joppa, and Jerusalem. But as to the Grecian cities, Gaza, Gadara, and Hippos, he cut them off from the kingdom and added them to Syria.
All right, so this kind of gets us into a little understanding because there's a lot of wars going around now about the Gaza, about these areas that they've been warring for. We're seeing at a certain point in time, they cut that out from the kingdom of Israel and they gave that to Syria. All right, so in here, they added that to the kingdom of Syria. All right, and that was no longer a part of Jerusalem. And a lot of that now is happening on the Gaza, these different areas there. All right. But they gave that to Syria, the neighboring countries. All right. But continue for us.
Now the revenue of the country that was given to Archelaus was 400 talents. Salome also, besides what the king had left her in his testament, was now made mistress of Jamnia and Ashdod and Phasaelis. Caesar did moreover bestow upon her the royal palace of Ascalon, by all which she got together a revenue of 60 talents. But he put her house under the ethnarchy of Archelaus.
All right, so what's going on now? They all want to get paid from these countries and these places. That's what shows you your power. That's what shows you own these places. So Archelaus is collecting how much? 200 talents, all right, for his country that he has over. So he's getting 200 talents at a time from the taxes, from everything. What she got, all right, was only 60 talents, all right, with all that property or the revenue that she's getting from those places. She got 60 talents, all right? So once again, this is showing that who owns the place because you're paying this tribute, you're paying this tax to the rightful owners, all right? But continue for us.
And for the rest of Herod's offspring, they received what was bequeathed to them in his testaments. But besides that, Caesar granted to Herod's 2 virgin daughters 500,000 drachmae of silver, and gave them in marriage to the sons of Pheroras. But after this family distribution, he gave between them what had been bequeathed to him by Herod, which was 1,000 talents, reserving himself only some inconsiderable presents in honor of the deceased.
All right, so Caesar also had money given to him from Herod. He just gave that back to the family. All right, so we're seeing a whole bunch of things bequeathed. We're seeing testaments. That means trusts have to have been used even at these times, because this is something can't be bequeathed. Something can't be a testament if it's not written in these ways. This stuff has always been here. We're seeing here now this stuff written down here. So they've been getting paid from a long time. Yeah. Money, taxes. This is not a new system. So some people are like, oh, this system not new. The system has spread. That's all it's done. The same stuff has been here. The system changed, yes, when Rome was coming with the republic type of idea, all right?
So, yeah, no, the more the empire grows too, the more laws and things of that nature that grow to, govern the people. Yeah.
Right, laws and more places. And once again, they're not saying, oh, this is Roman property and adding on to them. All they want is that place to pay them. So it's hard to find who's thing with Rome unless you know that they're getting paid. That's the only way you're going to know, all right? That's what we're seeing, the inward works here. How much are you getting paid from the city? That's yours. All right.
Your property tax.
Yes. Right. That's what shows you're getting paid. You letting the people rule, you letting people stay there, but someone's paying something. We see that question asked to Christ about paying that tax to Caesar. All right. So we're seeing how this all comes around to the time of Christ now. All right. So we're going to go once again to Herod Antipas, the Tetrarch, the ruler. We're going to get into his time because when we come back now, we're going to be a little more into his time because Herod the Great has now died. He's passed. All right. His other children is here. This child's going to be in these general areas, which is Herod Antipas. All right.
All right. This is Herod Antipas, the son of Herod the Great. Antipas ruled as a client king of the Roman Empire over a much smaller area than his father had. He was responsible for building projects at Sepphoris and Betharampatha and the construction of his capital, Tiberias, on the western shore of the Red Sea of Galilee. Antipas provoked controversy when he divorced his first wife, the daughter of King Aretas IV of Nabatea, in favor of Herodias, who had formerly been married to his brother, Herod II.
All right. So he went to Herodias. All right. And this female was already, born to his brother. And now he wants to take her. All right. But continue.
John the Baptist's condemnation of this arrangement led Antipas to have him arrested and subsequently executed in dramatic fashion, as told in the Gospels. The Gospel of Luke relates that when Jesus was brought before Pontius Pilate for trial, Pilate handed him over to Antipas, in whose territory Jesus had been active. However, Antipas sent him back to Pilate. Antipas was not Herod the Great's first choice for heir. That honor originally fell to Aristobulus and Alexander, Herod's sons by the Hasmonean princess Marianne. However, these heirs fell afoul of Herod's suspicions and ruthless nature and were consequently executed for treason in 7 BC, as was their mother. Herod's oldest son, Antipater, was then convicted of attempting to poison his father in 5 BC, and the new heir apparent, Herod II, also fell out of favor. The now elderly Herod fell back on his youngest son, Antipas, revising his will to make him heir. During his fatal illness in 4 BC, Herod had yet another change of heart about the succession. According to the final version of the will, Antipas's elder brother Archelaus was to become king of Judea, Idumea, and Samaria, while Antipas would rule Galilee and Perea. Philip was to receive Gaulonitis, the Golan Heights, Bithynia, southern Syria, Trachonitis, and Auronitis, Haran. Because of Judea's status as a Roman client kingdom, Herod's plans for the succession had to be ratified by Augustus. The three heirs therefore traveled to Rome to make their claims. Antipas arguing he ought to inherit the whole kingdom, and the others maintaining that Herod's final will ought to be honored. Augustus largely confirmed the division of territory set out by Herod in his final will, with Archelaus taking the prized territories. The brothers, however, had to be content with the title of ethnarch rather than king.
All right. So we see here that Judea's status is a Roman client kingdom. All right. Therefore, everything has to be ratified by the Caesars. All right. At that time, it was Augustus. So Augustus has to hear this. The three heirs go to Rome to make their claims. All right. And basically, the Caesar honors Herod and what he was doing and his will. All right. And Archelaus takes the prized territories. The others get the other ones. And they get the title of ethnarch. All right. We're going to go to the etymology of Tetrarch. I'll get ethnarch too.
This is the etymology of tetrarch. Tetrarch, noun, late Old English tetrarchy, ruler of one of 4 divisions of a kingdom or province. From late Latin tetrarcha, from tetrarchies, From Greece, Tetrarches, leader of 4 companies, ruler of 4 provinces. From Tetra, 4. From Pyrrhus, Quetor, 4. Archon, to rule. See Archon. Applied generally to subordinate rulers in the Roman Empire, especially in Syria.
So Tetrarch, once again, is a ruler of one of 4 divisions of a kingdom or a province. All right. So once again, this is going to be like a governor. So they've been using the word Tetrarch, but here they say ethnarch. And we're going to get to ethnarch as well, too. All right. Because, yes, this is going to go to basically a ruler of one of 4 divisions of a kingdom. But ethnarch gives us a little more understanding on what type of kingdom it is.
All right. This is ethnarch, etymology, ethnarch, noun. From the 1640s, from Latinized form of Greek ethnarches, from ethnos, nation of people, arch, chief first. All right. That's it.
All right. So I have another one here on Wikipedia. This ethnarch, the term refers generally to political leadership over a common ethnic group or homogeneous kingdom. So it's basically just saying he's basically a governor over a specific ethnic group of people. All right. It's not a people contrived of bear different races. This is more so saying, hey, you're the ruler of these specific people or tribe, and you're chief, but you're not king. All right. You're just chief over these tribes of these various places, but you're not a king. And once again, it's going to a specific tribe or nation. So Israel at this time, even though they're not all blood, they're all the nation of Israel because they're all following the Jewish principles. We have Samaritans, we have Idumeans, we have the Israelites there. All right. We have all of them in this region here, and they're all following the Most High laws, and they're all called Jews because they're following these customs. All right, so we're going to continue. So we're almost done here. All right, so we're going to go now and continue now into the works of Flavius Josephus, book 2. All right, we're at chapter 8. All right, we were just coming from chapter 6. And we're going to see now the entrance of Essenes. So we always went to go this, so we always go here to just get the quote of the Essenes Josephus. But now we're coming up and we're seeing how we get to the story and what this story is really saying now. All right. So it's the death of Herod now. Archelaus is, dealing with the kingdom. We're going to see what starts to transpire here.
This is the book of the works of Flavius Josephus, book 2, chapter 8. Archelaus' ethnarchy is reduced into a Roman province. The sedition of Judas of Galilee. The 3 sects. Paragraph 1. And now Archelaus' part of Judea was reduced into a province, and Coponius, one of the equestrian order among the Romans, was sent as a procurator, having the power of life and death put into his hands by Caesar.
All right, so while all this is happening, people that don't know, the kingdom was constantly being reduced. Rome is reducing the kingdom. Archelaus' part of Judea is being reduced into a province. It's getting smaller and smaller. Rome doesn't want Judea to branch out and rule. From they got there, we've been seeing that they've been minimalizing them. All right, but continue for us.
Under his administration, it was that a certain Galilean, whose name was Judas, prevailed with his countrymen to revolt, and said they were cowards if they would endure to pay a tax to the Romans, and would, after God, submit to mortal men as their lords.
All right, so this is the same Judas that we were reading about and going into the whole, the eagle thing and all of that with Pilate. Pilate was doing that. Pilate, yes. Keep going. Hey. But Pilate, all right? So Pilate brings that whole thing in there. That has to have to do with Pilate, with the whole eagle and stuff there. All right, but here we're seeing now the story go into Judas, all right, and Judas leading the people, not wanting to pay tax to the Romans, all right, and not submitting to mortal men as their lords, all right, but continue.
This man was a teacher of a peculiar sect of his own, and was not at all like the rest of those their leaders.
All right, so now we're getting to see who this Judas was, all right. that we were looking at before. This Judas is a leader of a different sect, all right? When he was coming out and he was reading the law and people was gathering together to hear him pronounce the law, that's not the Pharisaical law. That's not the Sadducees, all right? We're now looking, the Essenes is very hidden. Unless you're going into the details, you're not going to really understand where the Essenes are coming into play. But now you're seeing Judas is here. There's a next problem here happening. He's a leader of a particular sect of his own, all right? And he's going up against Archelaus now, all right, who replaced his father. All right. And he's, once again, not like the rest of the other leaders. And now we're going to get into paragraph 2, that those who follow the Essenes and us should be familiar with this paragraph. All right. Continue for us.
Paragraph 2. For there are 3 philosophical sects among the Jews.
All right. So why is he saying this? Because he's like, yo, the whole time, who are we speaking about in these records? Sadducees, Pharisees, Sadducees, Pharisees. He's now speaking about a next guy who's leading a particular different type of group, which is why he's going into the explanation of the 3 types of groups. All right. And giving you, he's not telling you he's an Essene. So even here, he's not telling you, oh, Judas is an Essene. Catch what he's saying, all right? He's telling you he's a teacher of a particular sect of his own that's not like the rest of them. The next paragraph, he's going to tell you the 3 different type of sects, all right? We know of the Sadducees. We know of the Pharisees. Even when we're going through this, we hear a lot of the dealings of the Pharisees, the Sadducees, them choosing sides, them dealing with Herod and them. We're not hearing about the Essenes. This is now the entrance of the Essenes. For the next, 6 paragraphs, he's going to be going into straight about the Essenes, which means he never told you about this sect, which is why he has to tell you now. So there's another sect there that's against all that's going on, that's keeping the laws even more than the Pharisees, all right? And it's key to understand this, because when Christ comes on the scene and we have Peter and Paul, a lot of people are attributing that to the Pharisees, all right? And it's not the Pharisees. Paul is coming and he's contesting against Essene type of individuals who even have a more valor for the law, all right? They're keeping more of the law than the Pharisees, all right? That's what they're doing. All right, but continue for us.
All right, this is the works of Flavius Josephus, book 2, chapter 8, paragraph 2. For there are 3 philosophical sects among the Jews, the followers of the first of which are the Pharisees, of the second, the Sadducees, and the third sect, which pretends to a severer discipline, are called Essenes. These last are Jews by birth, and seem to have a greater affection for one another than the other sects have. The Essenes reject pleasures as an evil, but esteem continence and the conquest over our passions to be virtue. They neglect wedlock, but choose out of other persons' children, while they are pliable and fit for learning, and esteem them to be of their kindred, and form them according to their own manners. They do not absolutely deny the fitness of marriage, and the succession of mankind thereby continued, but they guard against the lascivious behavior of women, and are persuaded that none of them persevere or preserve their fidelity to one man.
All right. So once again, so they are worried about a woman's lascivious behavior, and their understanding is like, yo, no woman is attached to one man. So this is why they're guarding themselves. And I tell people that too, to go back, because they're using law of nature. They're using, hey, guess what? When the world went away from God and they're naturally away from God, what did they go to? Multiple gods. Polytheism. So they're like, if the woman is not united with God, guess what they're dealing with? Polytheism, because that's what the subjects of God are dealing with, and they're made in that likeness. Women are in the likeness of those who are subservient to God. We become a woman when we're now dealing with God. All right. So the Essenes understood that, yo, I have to guard myself against women, and this is why the scripture says to get yourself a wife. Why? Because, and that's what I was telling brothers, off the record, that hey, you want to get yourself a woman and make her your wife, because in this world, you can't trust a woman. She's going to tell you, I'm only talking to you. And she's not really only talking to you. She's bringing you into other great sins. You get what I'm saying? Which is why they say, go get your own. Ensure it's your own. Because she could be lying to you. And that's what the Essenes were worried about here. All right? Knowing the nature of woman, knowing the nature of the flesh. It's not just woman, the flesh. And woman is the weaker of the flesh. All right. So how much more are they going to be struggling with it? And that's what the Essenes were guarding themselves against women. That's why they were so guarded against them, because they know that if any sin could leak in here, that's where it's going to come from, even more likely than a man. So once again, why is Josephus speaking about the Essenes? Because this Essene, Judas, is leading people against a revolt against Archelaus, the new king, as Herod has died now. We're seeing the Essenes. Where are the Essenes living? They're among Galilee. What was Judas called? A Galilean. So Essenes are what? Galileans. They were in Galilee. All right? This is what we're understanding right now. Essenes, Galilee, Benjamin, Essenes, they were dwelling together, because we already went into the Benjamin, all right, the light of the world lesson, showing you that Galileans and Benjamites, they're the same, one and the same as well. All right, so we're having here that Benjamites, Essenes, been linking together. Guess what they're not saying? They're not saying directly just sons of Zadok, because we know sons of Zadok are leading them, but there's other tribes that's brought in with them. Now they're called Essenes, all right? So once again, paying attention. Judas is what? Judas is a Galilean. All right, let's go back up. There is a certain Galilean whose name was Judas. All right, he's a teacher of a peculiar sect of his own. Josephus then goes into the three sects. He gives you the two that you're familiar with. Then he gives you the new one, the Essenes. How do we know that Judas is the Essene one that he's speaking about? Because for the next 6 paragraphs after this is straight information on the Essenes. All right, so Galilee has Essenes. Essene named Judas led a revolt against Archelaus. All right, Galileans have Essene culture. These are information we need to understand. All right, Christ lived in Galilee. All right, so we're kind of understanding who is following him. The Galileans, as we went into in that lesson. Why? Because they're more in tune with the scripture, prophecy, all of this. From the history we've been reading about, these guys are concerned about Herod. They're concerned about the kingship that's happening there. They're not really concerned about prophecy. All right. And that's what we're seeing here. All right. And this, we're going to go to Luke 13:1, and we're going to show Christ speak about Galileans here. We're going to end it here. All right. In these couple, this and then an article about it.
It's the book of St. Luke, chapter 13, verse 1. There were present at that season some that told him of the Galileans, whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. And Jesus answering said unto them, Suppose ye that these Galileans were sinners above all the Galileans, because they suffered such things? I tell you, nay, but except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish. Or those 18 upon whom the tower in Siloam fell and slew them. Think ye that they were sinners above all men that dwelt in Jerusalem? I tell you, nay, but except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish.
All right, so Christ is speaking about, because once again, when you're seeing here that it's the Galileans that are leading revolts. A lot of the revolts were being led by them. You're going to see that they got punished for these revolts. So Christ is now coming and speaking about, because they're believing what? That the Galileans, they're sinners for what they're doing. You get what I'm saying?
Well, that's why that statement is making. Anything good come out of Galilee?
So they're like, these people are all sinners over there. They're this. Because once again, they don't agree on the doctrine that's been going on, as we're seeing. Galileans, all of that has been separate from the Hasmoneans that has joined Herod, and the priests that have joined Herod, the Sadducees that have joined Herod and his different children around there. All right. While the Galileans, they have a different, they're going to war, absolute war, seditions. All right. Herod Antipas kind of like that, because they were causing the seditions that he had problems with the other ones. He wants to take over, and these ones are taking over too. So he's like, you know what? Let me control these realm over here, which is why he's in Galilee. All right. He kind of likes the Galileans because they will go and cause havoc and keep everything in order. Okay. Because they want to take things down. And Antipas wants to take things down. So he's following his father, who they try to trail behind the Jews when they're having a problem and let them eradicate themselves and then take over when they're weak. All right. So here we see he's telling the Galileans were killed. All right. Polite killed them. You're going to see that Antipas and
Pilate.
Pilate. Sorry, Pilate. Pilate and Antipas. All right, they have a war of beef going on with each other. All right, and when Antipas's citizens are going off and doing whatever, now Pilate is now wants to do more to them. So we're going to go to now, who were the Galileans whose blood Pilate mingled with their sacrifices?
Who were the Galileans whose blood Pilate mingled with their sacrifices? Whose blood Pilate had mingled? This piece of history is not recorded, as far as I can find, by Josephus. However, he states that the Galileans were the most seditious people in the land. They belonged properly to Herod's jurisdiction. But as they kept the great feast at Jerusalem, they probably, by their tumultuous behavior, one of them gave Pilate, who was a mortal enemy to Herod, a pretext to fall upon and slay many of them, and thus, perhaps, sacrifice the people to the resentment he had against the prince. Archelaus is represented by Josephus as sending his soldiers into the temple and slaying 3,000 men while they were employed in offering sacrifices. The Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. We don't have a record in a secular history about the specific incident mentioned here, but there is a similar incident before the ministry of Jesus. Pilate wanted to build an aqueduct from the pools of Solomon to the city of Jerusalem. To pay for it, he demanded money from the temple treasury, money that had been dedicated to God. And this outraged the people. When the Jews sent a delegation to beg for their money back, Pilate sent into the crowd soldiers dressed as common people. And at a certain signal, they took out daggers and attacked the people asking for the money. This doesn't seem to be the same incident mentioned here, but it shows how completely consistent it was with the character of Pilate to slaughter some Galilean Jews on their way to sacrifice to the Lord in Jerusalem.
All right, so here we see Pilate, all right, he's slaughtering the Galileans, most likely, because when we read this stuff, they still went to Jerusalem to give the sacrifice. That's what the Essenes did. They still went and offered up that sacrifice. So in one of these incidents of going there, they must have, angered Pilate, and now Pilate attacked them and killed them. And this is what Christ is speaking about now and talking about. But I brought all that out to show you and to start making connections of Benjamin, Galilee, Essenes, Galilee. All right. It's the same thing now. Benjamin, Essenes. We are always in one area concocted together. All right. Trying to follow the Most High in even more, all right, I guess you could say even tighter than the other groups are doing, all right, more stricter, all right, more according to his word. That's what they were trying to do at these times, all right, and we're seeing what people these were, the Galileans, all right, we ending it off there with the Galileans coming on the scene. They're there as well. The Essenes are there. They have a problem with the whole system. You're going to see that Herod Antipas wants to take down the kingdom. Therefore, he has the Galileans within his realm because he knows that these ones cause seditions. When they're against something, they're going right up against it. All right. And he's keeping them under him. All right. To make them have seditions against those, hoping that they'll eradicate them and he'll be able to take everything down when they weaken themselves. Yes. All right.
So basically, he likes the disorder.
Yeah,
so he wants to take over the kingdom because they cause a lot of disorder.
For power, they'll fight against each other and,
Yeah.
and weaken themselves.
Yeah. And then Rome will sit back and be like, all right, I'll choose one of the ones that, you know what I mean?
The winner.
Yeah, the winner, and, we'll go with him. And then we'll fool him and be like, you know what? You thought you're getting the kingdom bigger? We got to check you out first. You get what I'm saying?
Well, you can be a tetrarch.
Yeah, you could be a tetrarch. You're not a king right now. And that's kind of like what Rome been doing, been leading the way. If you honor Rome, they'll allow you to do what you want to do. If you don't, then Rome is against you. All right, but once again, all right, this was this week's lesson on the consuming fire, the image of God. We went through a lot in here, showing once again, Christ, when he was born, when Herod died, we went into the 5 children of Herod. Actually, there's like 7 children of Herod, but the 5 main ones that the scriptures speak about. We went into the 2 ones that came from the Hasmonean / Maccabean priesthood from that daughter, that princess daughter, Marianne, all right, and how they were going to get the kingdom, all right, and Antipater, the firstborn of Herod, he started spreading rumors and things to get them slaughtered. So this is all going back to what the family is trying to get rid of, those who are by de jure right, have right at the kingdom and throne. All right, and I made mention that those children that even have that right, they only have it through their mother's side. They don't have it through their father's side. So we've been leaving away from the principles of, hey, it's supposed to go to the family of David and the bloodline of David. It's moving away from that. They're just at least trying to make it an Israelite, or at least an Israelite who has priesthood blood in him. All right, which is completely wrong. All right, we went in to show that Herod the Great, trying to subdue all of this, is then seeking children. All right, because he's trying to kill the Messiah. He's trying to kill the image of God that he's understood, that's been prophesied to come to take his rightful de jure reign, because he's dealing with a de facto client kingdom under Rome. All right, Herod the Great tries to kill these children. All right, he dies. He gives his son Archelaus the rule. We went and showed how under Archelaus now, Essenes are rising up now. All right, Judas, all right, the Galilean, which Josephus shows us is coming from a sect called the Essenes, starts to rise up now, and they're now fighting against these people. Christ comes on the scene. He kind of lets us know that this infighting has caused Galileans to perish. Christ lets them know, you think these Galileans are sinners, great sinners, than anybody else because they suffered this great death. And that's what people will think, because they say, hey, they suffered this great death. That means it was upon them. But it could be either they're martyrs or they're sinners. Christ is showing them that they're martyrs. All right. They're not sinners. And that if they don't change, they're going to perish like those Galileans perished. All right.
So they saw them all gathered together and they thought that they would have to like cut them down a little bit. Is that why?
Who down?
Like the Galileans and they're all gathering together.
Yeah, I guess they're gathering together. We're warring against the kingdom. So whenever you're going against anybody from on up, they're going to be like, hey, we have a problem with these people. Whenever you get a chance to take out some of them. Herod doesn't have a problem with them because once again, I'm showing that he's using them as a whipping tool, all right, to keep the other people in line and to make them not worry about him. They're so worried about the Essenes and their seditions and what they're doing, all right, that they're not really focused on him and what's going on. And we went into the image of God, them bringing idols. So we're seeing here that Israel is not falling to idol worship. They're dealing with all these problems that whenever it happens, they're ready to die. They're ready to go to war for these things. And every time they do this, the people then just give up because they're like, yo, we can't rule somebody if they're going to all kill themselves. So because of that, because they're ready to kill themselves for these things, they always leave them alone after they try to attempt these things, putting idols in there, doing this in there. All right. They even show their bare necks, saying slice their necks off, all of their necks right now. They're very serious about keeping these temple laws. What we're going to show is that they don't understand Christ, and that's the true image of God that they end up violating. All right. And this is going to make sense too, because Israelites today will try to say that we're under curses for violating the laws of Moses. All right. We already suffered these under Moses. All right. You want to know those scriptures? You go to Acts 2 and 5. Jews came out of all nations. You go to Baruch chapter 2, where Baruch tells the state of the people that they all suffered under the curses of Moses. They've been scattered among all the nations round about them. Acts 2 and 5 shows you that the Jews came out of every nation. All right. They spoke in tongues. Why they speak in tongues? Because there's Jews out of every nation already. All right. That speak every tongue under the sun. Therefore, they need tongues. So we already suffered the curses of Moses. All right. What we are suffering from, go to Psalm 69. We're suffering from killing the Messiah. That's what we're suffering from. And why are we suffering from killing the Messiah? Because we won't leave the law alone. So we're getting our thing ready to contend against this Israelite, because it's very clear when we go into this. What are you going to tell me when these things clearly state this stuff? Psalm 69 and 20. All right. David, they're suffering from the curses of David. And this is something they need to understand. All right. David put the curse on them. So we're at Psalm 69 and 20.
It's the book of Psalm, chapter 69, verse 20. Reproach had broken my heart, and I am full of heaviness. And I looked for some to take pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none. They gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. Let their table become a snare before them, and that which should have been for their welfare, let it become a trap. Let their eyes be darkened, that they see not, and make their loins continually to shake. Pour out thy indignation upon them, and let thy wrathful anger take hold of them. Let their habitation be desolate, and let none dwell in their tents. For they persecute him whom thou hast smitten, and they talk to the grief of those whom thou hast wounded. Add iniquity unto their iniquity, and let them not come into thy righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living, and not be written with the righteous.
All right. So this is David's curse. There's no curse. There's no curse of Moses. All right. This is the curse of David that came on Israel. All right. And a lot of them, they're not even aware of these things, because we can go and from this lesson, we can see how many times, hey, they did something to the temple repaired. They did something, they pray to God, they giving it back. They did something, okay, we clear out the land, God puts a spirit on the king, build back the temple. These things never lasted for long. The longest they never had a king, 471 years. All right, then we went back and Aristobalo finally put the kingship, the diadem on his head. All right, that's the longest. How long have we been in captivity? All right, how long have we been away from our land? All right, these are a long time. This is longest ever in history. It shows us that that's not the same curse. It says, until we honor and bless him who cometh in the name of the Most High, those curses won't come off of us. And if you look at history, we have yet to set up a church that understands what Christ has came and done for our people. This is what we're teaching. We're ministers of the new covenant, real ministers of the new covenant. All right. There's a lot of people saying that, taking on the Hebrew, color, all of that doctrine, but they're not preaching the new covenant. We are preaching the new covenant. That's why we're going through history. We're making people understand the history more, how it's tied to the modern day times right now, how all what happened back then is still tied to our culture, to our politics right now. All right.
To our law.
Yeah, to our laws. All right. So with that being said, we're going to go to Philippians 4 and 8.
It's the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true.
All right, so it's true. What's true? It's true that Galileans, all right, are a connection to Essenes. All right, it's true that Herod had an obsession with the throne and the kingdom. It sent him to be a deranged madman. It's true that there's separation between de jure and de facto. It's true that since those times, they've been trying to eliminate those of the bloodline who will outrightfully contend against those and say that, hey, they have these rights by blood. All right. It's true that our people, all right, did not worship Christ. Therefore, they suffered under the curses handed down to them by David. All right. Not Moses. All right. Moses dealt with the laws of Moses. David dealt with the killing of Christ. All right. It's true that we are suffering these things today because of our violations against the image of God. It's true that at these times, the Jews are not idolaters. They're not dealing with other gods. All right. Their doctrine might be off because God sent the Essenes elsewhere and learn, but they're trying to keep the idol worship and all of that stuff to their best ability out of the way. They don't know that their calendar is off. Their other things are off. Some of their diet is off. All right. The Essenes are the one under the 390 years, the period of wrath that was shown that. All right. They would have to wait for Christ to come and give them the true word. All right. Continue for us.
All right. Whatsoever things are honest.
All right. So it's honest. What's honest? All right. It's honest that when Christ came, he's the rightful heir. He's the de jure. All right. It's honest that Herod and his families are the de factos. This has been the problem from these times. It's honest that Rome has subdued Judea, all right, and put them under their wings, have made them a client Roman kingdom that's controlling their kings, that's controlling Herod's kingdom, all right. Judea at time of Christ is under control by the Caesar, the Roman Caesar, and their peoples. That's who has the last say so. All right, continue.
Whatsoever things are just,
All right, it's just what's happening. It's just what happened to Herod the Great when he got sick. Going back to pay attention, pay attention. Sickness is attached to sins as well. Herod the Great thought he could just go and bathe in the best waters, thermal waters, the best oils, all of that to get rid of that sickness, but not Levi from the sin that he was committing. We cannot do that. All right, continue for us.
whatsoever things are pure,
All right, it's pure when we're dealing with the Most High, when we're dealing with the Essenes, all right, when we're operating the way the Most High wanted us to deal it, when we're dealing with Christ, the Messiah, the de jure. It's pure. His kingdom is pure, not this concocted half-mixed kingdom that we've been seeing is happening from the Roman time with the Idumean, Judah mixture, Samaritan mixture. And that's fine if they all want to be Jews and operate as Jews, but you got to follow the law. You got to come to the Most High according. You got to come to Christ first and foremost. All right, continue for us.
whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you.
All right. So with that being said, all right, this was our lesson, the consuming fire. All right, the image of God versus the image that provokes, the glorification of the Son. This is part 9. All right, and yes, we're gonna have to turn this into a great book. This is the story of the Bible. This is the emphasis of the story of the Bible. There's many things happening, but we're given the direct outline. This all starts from the image of God and it ends with the image of God. We are trying to connect ourselves to the image of God. We are now God and man combined as one. God said that he will be our God and dwell within us. And that's what we're here to show and proclaim. All right. With that being said, I want to say all praises be unto the Most High Almighty, Ahaya Yeshahaya Christ, our Lord and Savior. My name is Archbishop Shamar,
And I'm Bishop Michaela.
and this is the Essene Community Church of Christ. That was our Sabbath lesson / report. All right. Enjoy the rest of your Sabbath. Enjoy the Lord's Day tomorrow. Here we deal with both days. All right. We don't separate the days. That's what they want. We've been reading this Roman story. They want us the infighting. All right. And then they're able to come swoop in. No, we understand that God gave us 2 days. One under the old covenant that resembles the 7th day, the 1,000-year rest. One under the new covenant that resembles the new heaven, the new earth, the destruction and the defeat of death. With all that being said, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath.
Peace and blessings. Happy Sabbath.